All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling the Bermuda Triangle.
Ooh, a classic.
You know, that infamous stretch of ocean that seems to swallow up ships and planes?
Yeah, leaving behind a whole lot of unanswered questions.
Exactly. And to help us untangle this mystery, we've got a stack of YouTube documentaries ready to go.
So are we going to try to separate fact from fiction?
You got it. We'll see what the evidence tells us, whether it's truly supernatural or something we can explain.
One thing that always gets me is just how massive the Bermuda Triangle actually is.
Right. It's not just a small little area, right?
Not at all. I mean, we're talking about roughly 500,000 square miles of ocean.
Wow, that's huge.
It stretches all the way from Florida to Puerto Rico to Bermuda.
Like a giant triangle, bigger than some countries.
Exactly. So when you think about it, it's a lot of open ocean with its own unique challenges.
It really puts things into perspective.
Definitely.
And you know what adds to the intrigue? Even Christopher Columbus, way back in the day, he recorded some strange happenings in the area.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, compass malfunctions, strange lights on the horizon. It seems like even he was a little spooked by what he saw out there.
Yeah, I can imagine. Those early accounts, even if they got exaggerated over time, they really laid the foundation for the legend we know today.
You're right. And then in 1964, there was this writer named Vincent Gaddis.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
He wrote a book called Invisible Horizons, and it really solidified the term Bermuda Triangle.
So his book kind of made the mystery mainstream.
Exactly. It helped to cement this image of the Bermuda Triangle as a place where things just vanish without a trace.
Spooky.
So from Columbus's weird sightings to Gaddis's book, the stage was set for the Bermuda Triangle to become this big enigma.
It's like a perfect recipe for a mystery.
Absolutely. But let's move beyond the legends now, shall we?
Sounds good.
Let's dig into some actual cases that have fueled this mystery, because some of them are truly baffling.
Like the USS Cyclops, right?
Yes, that's one of the most well-known disappearances, isn't it?
Absolutely. In 1918, this massive naval cargo ship, over 300 people on board, just vanished.
And they never found any trace of it?
Nope, no wreckage, no distress signals, nothing. Just gone, as if the ocean just swallowed it whole.
It's hard to wrap your head around that, especially considering it wasn't some tiny little boat.
Right. The Cyclops was a huge ship carrying thousands of tons of ore.
And yet, poof, gone without a trace.
It really highlights how powerful and mysterious the ocean can be.
Do any of the documentaries offer any solid explanations for what happened to the Cyclops?
Well, there are plenty of theories floating around.
Like what?
You've got everything from rogue waves to enemy attacks during wartime.
Makes sense, given it was during World War I.
Exactly. But the thing is, there's no concrete evidence to support any of these theories.
So the mystery remains.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that lack of clear answers, well, it's something you see in a lot of Bermuda Triangle cases.
Speaking of vanishing into thin air, we can't forget about Flight 19.
Ah, yes, Flight 19. This one's a real head-scratcher.
5 Navy bombers, just gone in 1945, and then the rescue plane sent to find them, that disappeared too.
It's like something out of a movie.
And those eerie radio transmissions from the pilots just add another layer of creepiness to it.
Definitely adds to the mystery. What makes Flight 19 really interesting is the level of experience those pilots had.
Right. It wasn't like they were rookies.
No way. The flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, he was a very experienced pilot, thousands of hours in the air.
So this wasn't just a case of getting lost on a training exercise.
Not at all. These guys knew what they were doing, and yet they still vanished.
It's like something inexplicable took over.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What do the documentaries say about Flight 19?
Well, some suggest that Taylor might have thought they were over the Florida Keys.
So he could have flown further out to sea by mistake.
Yeah, and that could have led to them running out of fuel and crashing.
It's a possibility, but there are other ideas too, like compass malfunctions may be caused by magnetic weirdness in the area.
But without any wreckage, it's all just speculation, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Just theories without any hard proof.
So we've got a massive cargo ship gone, experienced pilots vanishing. It's no wonder the Bermuda Triangle has this reputation as a place where the rules just don't apply.
Right. It's like something strange is going on there.
But are there any cases that offer a more, well, rational explanation?
There's one that comes to mind. The SS Cotopaxi.
Oh yeah, that freighter that went missing in 1925?
That's the one. For years, everyone thought it was another victim of the Bermuda Triangle.
But one of the documentaries suggests they might have found the wreckage.
Off the coast of Florida.
Really? What makes them think it's the Cotopaxi?
Well, the wreckage they found is super deep and covered in sand, like it's been there a long time.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they found one of the boilers flipped 90 degrees, which suggests a major catastrophe.
Yeah, like something really bad happened there.
Exactly. But the most compelling thing, they were able to measure the wreck using an ROV.
An ROV.
You know, one of those underwater robots.
Oh, right.
And get this, the measurements match almost perfectly with the Cotopaxi's original blueprints.
That's pretty convincing.
Right. But wait, there's more. They also found this valve with a logo from the Scott Valve Company.
And why is that significant?
Well, that company was based just 12 miles from where the Cotopaxi was built.
Wow, that's quite a coincidence.
You think. It's a bit too perfect, don't you think?
Yeah, it's starting to sound like they might be right about the Cotopaxi.
But hold on a second. Haven't we heard about these discoveries before?
You mean where they think they found a famous wreck, but it turns out to be something else?
Exactly. So what makes this one so different? What makes them so sure?
Okay, you've got me hooked. What's the clincher? What's the piece of evidence that seals the deal?
I'm getting to that, don't worry.
All right, I'm all ears.
You see, it all comes down to some historical records.
Oh, like what?
Well, the documentary team, they dug up this legal case.
A legal case.
Yeah, filed by the families of the Cotopaxi crew against the shipping company.
I see, so it's like a wrongful death lawsuit or something.
Exactly. And guess what they found in those documents?
Tell me.
Distress signals.
Wait a minute, I thought the ship vanished without a trace.
That's what everyone thought for years. But these distress signals change everything.
So they actually sent out calls for help.
They did. And those signals were picked up in Jacksonville, Florida, just 2 days after the Cotopaxi left Charleston.
So they know where the ship was when it sent those calls.
They do. And guess what?
It matches the location of the wreck.
You got it. Bang on.
Wow. Okay, so we've got the measurements, the artifacts, the location, and now these distress signals. It has to be the Cotopaxi, right?
It's looking more and more likely with each piece of evidence.
So mystery solved. What more could there be to this story?
Well, the legal case actually revealed a few more things about the Cotopaxi that are pretty interesting.
Oh, like what?
For starters, it turns out that ship was not in great shape.
Really? What do you mean?
Well, it was built during World War I, and apparently it had a bit of a history of mechanical problems.
Oh no, so it's kind of a rickety old ship.
You could say that. In fact, it even ran aground once, causing some serious damage.
Oh wow, so they sent this ship, with its history of issues, through the Bermuda Triangle, a place known for rough seas and unpredictable weather.
You're catching on. It's starting to sound like a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Definitely, and it doesn't sound like they needed any supernatural forces to explain its sinking.
That's a good point. And it gets even worse. The legal case also revealed that the Cotopaxi was overloaded with coal on its final voyage.
Overloaded, that's not good.
Not good at all. It means the ship was riding really low in the water, making it even more susceptible to rough seas and bad weather.
So it's starting to look like a combination of things led to the Cotopaxi's sinker. It's poor condition, the overloading, and probably a nasty storm.
It seems that way. And, it makes you wonder how many other mysterious disappearances might have similar explanations.
Right. Maybe there were just accidents or mistakes that got blown out of proportion over time.
That's what we're starting to uncover, isn't it? And there's one more thing from the legal case that really drives that point home.
Oh, what's that?
Well, one of the testimonies was from a harbor pilot who helped guide the Cotopaxi out of Charleston.
Okay, and?
He said that the ship was riding super low in the water, a clear sign of overloading.
That doesn't sound good.
Nope. And get this, he even warned the captain about a storm that was brewing.
You're kidding. So they knew the risks and went ahead anyway?
It appears so.
That's tragic.
It is, isn't it? It sounds like they were tempting fate.
It makes you wonder what was going through the captain's mind.
The documentary actually follows the captain's descendant, a guy named Douglas Myers, as he learns about all of this new information.
Oh, wow. So they got the family involved.
They did. Can you imagine? For decades, his family lived with all these unanswered questions about what happened to his grandfather.
It must have been difficult not knowing.
Absolutely. And then to suddenly have all these new details emerge, to shift from this mysterious Bermuda Triangle disappearance to a more concrete, albeit tragic, explanation.
It's like a weight lifted off their shoulders, but also a heavy truth to bear.
Exactly. It's bittersweet, isn't it?
It is, and it really speaks to the human need for closure, for answers, even if they are painful.
You're right. And the Cotopaxi case definitely offers a different perspective on the Bermuda Triangle, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you think twice about all the supernatural stuff.
It does. It's like maybe things aren't always as mysterious as they seem.
Right. But the Cotopaxi case is kind of unique, isn't it?
How so?
Well, they were lucky enough to actually find the wreckage and piece together what happened.
That's true. But it does make you wonder
About.
how many other cases might have similar explanations. Cases where we just don't have the wreckage or the historical records to tell the full story.
That's a great point. Maybe a lot of these disappearances are just waiting to be explained.
Perhaps it seems like we're starting to peel back the layers of the Bermuda Triangle myth, revealing a more rational side to it.
I agree. But I have to admit, there's still a part of me that wants to believe there's something more to it, something we can't quite explain.
I know what you mean. The allure of the unknown is hard to resist.
So are there any cases or phenomena that just don't fit neatly into these rational explanations?
That's the thing about the Bermuda Triangle, isn't it? Even when you find some solid explanations, there are always those lingering questions, those cases that make you go, Hmm.
You mentioned something earlier about hexagonal clouds.
Oh, right. Those are fascinating.
What are they exactly, and how do they tie into all of this?
Well, scientists have observed these weird hexagonal cloud formations over the Bermuda Triangle using satellite imagery.
Hexagonal clouds, that's bizarre.
It is. And what's even more interesting is that these clouds can create these powerful downdrafts of air.
Downdrafts, like wind blowing downwards.
Exactly. They're like air bonds, essentially, and they can generate winds of over 170 miles per hour.
Wow, that's intense. So are you suggesting these air bombs could be bringing down planes or causing ships to sink?
It's definitely a possibility. Imagine a small plane flying into one of those downdrafts.
Yeah, it wouldn't stand a
It
chance.
could be forced down or seriously damaged, making a safe landing pretty much impossible.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is, isn't it? And we can't forget about the Gulf Stream.
Ah, yes, that powerful current that lends right through the Bermuda Triangle.
That's the one. And let me tell you, it can create some seriously unpredictable conditions.
Like what?
Well, it can shift water temperatures really quickly, create these thick fog banks, and even influence the formation of those hexagonal clouds we were just talking about.
So we've got hurricanes, rogue waves, air bombs, and the unpredictable Gulf Stream. It's like the Bermuda Triangle is this perfect storm of natural hazards.
You got it. It's a wild place. But let's not forget about the human element either.
Right, like with the Cotopaxi captain, maybe he made some bad calls.
Exactly. And think about it back in the day, before we had all these fancy navigation systems, sailors relied on compasses, sextants, and celestial navigation.
That's a lot more challenging back then.
Oh yeah, even a small miscalculation or a faulty compass reading could throw a ship way off course.
Especially in an area as tricky as the Bermuda Triangle.
Exactly. And you mentioned earlier about the magnetic field being strange in that area.
Right. Could that have played a role in these navigational errors?
Well, there's this point of the Bermuda Triangle where true north and magnetic north actually line up.
And that's a problem.
It can be, especially if you're relying on older navigation methods.
So you're saying a compass could give you wonky readings in that area?
Exactly. It would be super confusing, especially for sailors in the days before GPS.
I can see how that would lead to ships getting lost or running aground.
Definitely. And don't forget about the psychological impact of being lost at sea.
Yeah, that must be terrifying.
Absolutely. Stress, fatigue, panic, all of that can cloud your judgment and lead to bad decisions, making an already dangerous situation even worse.
So we've explored natural hazards, human error, equipment failure, even the psychological effects of being lost at sea.
It's starting to look like the Bermuda Triangle might not be so supernatural after all, huh?
Yeah, it seems like we're building a strong case for debunking the myth.
But there are still those stories, those truly bizarre accounts that make you wonder.
You know, those stories that seem to defy rational explanation?
Ah, yes, those are the ones that really get the imagination going. Those are the stories that keep the legend of the Bermuda Triangle alive, despite all the evidence pointing towards more down-to-earth explanations.
I'm thinking of things like electronic fog, time warps, and even,
Alien abductions.
you read my mind.
It's a classic.
But surely nobody actually believes that's what's happening in the Bermuda Triangle, right?
You'd be surprised. There are some folks out there who are absolutely convinced that aliens are using the Bermuda Triangle as some kind of interdimensional gateway.
Aliens in the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, now that's taking things a bit too far, even for me.
Huh. I know what you mean. But hey, who knows? Maybe there are things out there that we just can't comprehend yet.
Right. I guess that's part of the appeal of the Bermuda Triangle. It allows us to entertain those what-if scenarios, to consider possibilities beyond our current understanding.
Exactly. It's a place where reality and imagination collide.
So, besides time warps, electronic fog, and aliens, what other crazy theories have people come up with to try and explain the Bermuda Triangle?
Well, there's the idea that some unusual magnetic activity in the area is messing with electronic equipment.
Causing ships and planes to malfunction and disappear.
Precisely. But we talked about that earlier, remember? While the magnetic field in the Bermuda Triangle is unique, it doesn't really explain how ships and planes could just vanish without a trace.
True. What else is there?
Oh, and then there's the theory about those underwater methane explosions we discussed earlier.
The ones that could cause ships to sink.
Yep. Some researchers think those explosions could also be housing problems for aircraft.
Wait, are you saying a plane could fly into a pocket of methane gas and just fall out of the sky?
That's what some folks believe. They think these massive methane eruptions create pockets of low-density air above the water, making it hard for planes to stay aloft.
That's a pretty disturbing thought.
It is, isn't it? But like a lot of the theories surrounding the Bermuda Triangle, there's just not enough evidence to back it up.
It seems like we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored natural explanations, human error, equipment failure, and even ventured into the realm of the supernatural.
We've really gone deep. So what are your thoughts so far? What stands out to you?
Well, I'm struck by the sheer number of plausible explanations we've found for these disappearances.
Right. It seems like the reality of the situation, well, still super fascinating, might be more grounded in things we can understand.
Exactly. We're talking about things like natural phenomena, human mistakes, and the inherent dangers of the ocean.
It's not necessarily aliens or sea monsters, right?
It's looking that way. It seems like we're slowly peeling away the layers of myth and folklore to reveal a more rational picture underneath.
It's like we're solving a puzzle.
But even with all these rational explanations, there are still those lingering
Oh, I
questions.
love those. What kind of questions are swirling around in your head?
Well, there are the unsolved cases, the ones where we have no wreckage, no explanation, no closure for the families.
Those are the toughest ones for sure.
And they make you wonder, right? Is there something more to the story? Is there something we're missing?
That's the enduring allure of the Bermuda Triangle, isn't it? It's that little sliver of doubt, that possibility of something beyond our current understanding that keeps us coming back for more.
It's like, even if we accept that most, if not all, of these disappearances have logical explanations, there's still this one big question that remains unanswered.
Okay, lay it on me. What's the question?
Why this particular patch of ocean? Why has the Bermuda Triangle become such a focal point for mystery and intrigue? It's not like other parts of the ocean have storms or strong currents or deep trenches, right?
Right. It's not unique in that sense.
Exactly. So why the Bermuda Triangle? Why does it have this hold on our imaginations?
That's a really good question. I think it might have something to do with a confluence of factors.
Like what?
Well, first you have the geography. The Bermuda Triangle is a relatively small area, especially when you compare it to the vastness of the Atlantic.
Okay, but it's surrounded by some pretty popular destinations, right?
Exactly. You've got the east coast of the United States, the Caribbean, Bermuda itself.
So there's a lot of traffic going through that area, ships, planes, boats.
Lots of traffic, which means more chances for something to go wrong.
Right, more opportunities for accidents.
Exactly. And then you've got all those environmental factors we talked about, the crazy weather, the Gulf Stream, those hexagonal
It's
clouds.
a pretty volatile region, that's for sure.
It is. And then, of course, you can't forget the media.
Ah, yes, the media. Always happy to sensationalize a good story.
Always. The Bermuda Triangle is like a media goldmine, right?
Totally. It's got mystery, danger, the possibility of the supernatural.
It's got it all. And let's be honest, we humans, we love stories like that. Stories that tap into our deepest fears and
We
fascinations.
can't resist a good mystery.
It's in our nature. So are we saying the Bermuda Triangle is just a big hoax then?
I don't think it's a hoax exactly.
Or like an overblown myth?
Yeah, maybe. It's a story that's taken on a life of its own, fueled by our collective imagination.
But what about the people who genuinely believe in the Bermuda Triangle? The ones who have lost loved ones and are still searching for answers? What do we say to them?
That's a tough one. It's important to remember that their beliefs often stem from a very human need to understand tragedy.
Right, when something terrible happens, especially when it's unexplained, it's natural to look for answers, even if those answers lie outside the realm of logic.
It's a way of coping, of trying to make sense of the senseless.
Exactly. It's not about dismissing their beliefs or telling them they're wrong.
It's about recognizing the very human need for meaning and understanding, especially in the face of something as devastating as losing a loved one.
Well said. Perhaps the Bermuda Triangle serves as a reminder that we're all storytellers at heart.
We crave narratives that explain the unexplainable, that offer a sense of order in a chaotic world.
And the Bermuda Triangle is a story that's been told and retold for generations, right?
Exactly. Each retelling adds new layers of intrigue and mystery.
It's like a game of telephone, but with a spooky twist.
But at its core, the Bermuda Triangle story reflects our deep fascination with the unknown, with the power of nature, and with the limits of our own understanding.
That's beautifully put. So where do we go from here? What do you think people should take away from all of this? What's the message of the Bermuda Triangle?
That's a good question. I think the message is this: embrace curiosity, question everything, seek evidence, and be open to the possibility that the most extraordinary stories often have the most ordinary explanations.
I like that. It's like the Bermuda Triangle might not be a gateway to another dimension.
But it is a gateway to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
That's a great way to put it. So to all you deep divers out there, stay curious, stay skeptical, and never stop exploring.
Who knows what mysteries will unravel next time?
The possibilities are endless.
Until then, keep those questions coming, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.
Well, remember how we were talking about those distress signals the Cotopaxi sent out?
Yeah, the ones picked up in Jacksonville.
Right. Well, it turns out those signals weren't just random cries for help.
What do you mean?
The documentary team dug deeper into the legal case.
The one filed by the families?
Yep, and they discovered that the Cotopaxi had actually reported some problems before going silent.
Problems like what?
Engine trouble.
Oh, no. So the ship was already having issues.
It seems that way. They even had to stop in Charleston for repairs.
So they knew something was wrong, but they still set sail again.
Yep, they do.
Wow, knowing what we know now, that seems like a risky move.
doesn't it? It adds another layer to the whole story.
It really does. So these distress signals, were they related to those engine problems?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely possible.
It's like a puzzle, trying to piece together what happened all those years ago.
Exactly. And these distress signals are a big piece of that puzzle.
Oh, knowing that the Cotopaxi was already having engine trouble before it disappeared, does that change your perspective on the whole Bermuda Triangle mystery?
You know, it does make you think.
Right, like maybe some of these disappearances aren't as mysterious as we've made them out to be?
Perhaps it highlights the importance of looking at the whole picture, considering all the factors involved,
Exactly. We can't just jump to conclusions about supernatural forces or alien abductions without considering the more mundane explanations.
like mechanical failure or human error.
Right. Those things happen, and they can have devastating consequences, especially out at sea.
You know, it reminds me of that Sherlock Holmes quote, "Once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth."
That's a good one. So in this case, are we eliminating the supernatural and pointing to something more, well, practical?
I think the evidence is definitely leading us in that direction.
It seems like the more we learn about the Cotopaxi, the less mysterious its disappearance becomes.
Right. It's like those layers of mystery we were talking about earlier. They're slowly being peeled away.
And what's left underneath is a story of a ship with problems, a risky decision to set sail, and a tragic end.
It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest explanation is the most likely one.
And it makes you wonder if other Bermuda Triangle disappearances might have similar explanations.
Maybe some ships ran into trouble, sent out distress calls that went unanswered, and eventually sank, leaving no trace behind.
It's possible, and without the wreckage or the historical records, those stories would remain mysteries.
Exactly. Lost to the depths of time and the vastness of the ocean.
It's both fascinating and a little bit eerie, isn't it?
It is. It's a reminder of how much we still don't know about the ocean and how easily things can go wrong out there.
You know, thinking about all these unsolved mysteries, it makes me wonder about the people who have lost loved ones in the Bermuda Triangle.
The families left behind with no answers, no closure.
Exactly. It must be incredibly difficult to cope with that kind of loss, not knowing what happened, not being able to say goodbye.
It must be heartbreaking.
And in those cases, it's understandable why people might cling to the idea of the supernatural, of something beyond our understanding.
Right. It's a way of trying to make sense of the senseless, to find some kind of meaning in the midst of tragedy.
Because sometimes the truth is just too hard to get.
I agree. And sometimes it's easier to believe in something extraordinary than to accept the harsh realities of life.
So what do we do then? How do we balance our fascination with the unknown, with those what-if scenarios, with the need to be grounded in reality, in evidence?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's like walking a tightrope.
You don't want to dismiss people's beliefs or shut down their curiosity.
No, of course not.
But you also don't want to perpetuate myths or spread misinformation.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
So how do we find that balance? How do we approach these mysteries with an open mind, but also with a healthy dose of skepticism?
I think it all starts with being aware of our own biases, our own tendencies to seek patterns and explanations, even when they might not be there.
Right. We have to be willing to question our own assumptions.
Exactly. And we have to be willing to let go of those assumptions if the evidence doesn't support them.
Easier said than done, right? Especially when we're dealing with something as captivating and mysterious as the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, definitely. But I think it's important to remember that the truth, even if it's not as exciting as the myth, is still worth pursuing.
Because the truth can offer its own kind of closure, its own kind of understanding.
And sometimes the truth is even stranger than fiction.
Well, on that note, let's shift gears a bit.
Sounds good. What do you have in mind?
I'm curious to explore some of the other theories surrounding the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, you mean the more, shall we say, outlandish ones?
Exactly. We've talked about natural explanations and human error, but what about the more fringe ideas?
The ones that make you raise an eyebrow.
You know, the stuff about electronic fog, time warps, maybe...
Alien abductions.
Ha! You're reading my mind again?
It wouldn't be a deep dive into the Bermuda Triangle without touching on those, right?
I guess not. So let's indulge our curiosity for a bit, shall we? Tell me, what are some of the wildest explanations you've come across in your research?
Okay, buckle up. We're about to enter the Twilight Zone.
I'm ready. Hit me with your best shot.
All right, so where were we? Ah, yes, the really wild theories about the Bermuda Triangle.
The ones that make you wonder if people are serious?
Exactly. Like, are we really talking about alien abductions here?
You know, it wouldn't be a true deep dive without at least mentioning them.
True enough. So let's start with one that always gets a lot of attention, the electronic fog.
Okay, electronic fog, that sounds ominous.
It does, doesn't it? There's this famous account from a pilot named Bruce Gernon.
I think I've heard of him.
He claims he flew through this tunnel-shaped cloud,
Okay, and
and when he came out the other side, he was hundreds of miles away.
hold on, he flew through a cloud and teleported.
Essentially, he said it all happened in a matter of minutes, like a time warp experience.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, it sounds pretty far-fetched, but he even wrote a book about it.
I guess some people are willing to believe anything.
Well, the Bermuda Triangle has that effect on people, doesn't it? It makes them question everything they thought they knew.
So we've got electronic fog that supposedly teleports planes. What about those alien abduction stories?
Ah, yes, the extraterrestrial theory.
I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical about that one.
You and me both. But some people are convinced that aliens are using the Bermuda Triangle as some sort of intergalactic portal.
Like a cosmic layover on their way to somewhere else?
Exactly. They think these aliens are snatching up ships and planes, taking them for a joyride, and then returning them, sometimes with a few missing screws or a misplaced compass.
Okay, now that's just crazy talk.
I know, right? But it's all part of the fun, isn't it?
I guess so. It's entertaining, even if it's not very believable.
So, besides the teleportation fog and the alien abductions, what other wacky theories have you come across?
Well, I've heard people talk about Atlantis being involved somehow.
Ah, yes, the lost city of Atlantis, a classic.
Some people think it's submerged beneath the Bermuda Triangle and that its advanced technology is somehow responsible for the disappearances.
Like some kind of underwater force field or energy vortex.
Exactly. But again, there's zero evidence to support any of that.
It's all speculation, fueled by our fascination with the idea of a lost civilization.
But hey, it makes for a good story, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what it all boils down to in the end, storytelling. The Bermuda Triangle, it's this blank canvas onto which we project our fears, our fascinations, our desires for mystery and adventure.
We fill in the gaps with our own imaginations.
Precisely. And over time, those stories get embellished, exaggerated, and passed down through generations.
Until the line between fact and fiction becomes blurred.
Exactly. It's like a giant game of telephone, but with spooky consequences.
But at its heart, the Bermuda Triangle story is about our enduring relationship with the unknown, with the vastness and power of the natural world.
It's a reminder that there are still things out there that we don't fully understand.
And maybe never will.
Which is both exciting and a little bit terrifying, isn't it?
It is, but I think that's okay. It's good to be reminded that there's still mystery and wonder in the world.
Absolutely. And it's up to us to decide how we approach those mysteries, with fear and superstition, or with curiosity and a thirst for knowledge.
So what's the takeaway here for our listeners? What will we want them to remember about the Bermuda Triangle?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Don't be afraid to question, to dig deeper, to seek out the truth.
Even if that truth turns out to be more ordinary than we'd hoped.
Exactly. Because sometimes the most ordinary explanations can be the most profound.
Well said. And who knows, maybe by approaching these mysteries with an open mind, but a critical eye, we might even stumble upon some truly groundbreaking discoveries.
You never know. That's the beauty of exploration, isn't it?
It is. So to all you deep divers out there, stay curious, stay skeptical, and never stop exploring.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll crack the code of the Bermuda Triangle once and for all.
Until then, keep those questions coming, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.